Добрый день, доброе утро.
Good morning, dear participants of this discussion. Please take your seats for as long as there are seats available. Today we're in a third day and a final day of the Gaidar Forum. The previous 2 days have shown there's a lot of interest, very active participation from all members of the professional community, from all industries of the Russian economy, from production areas. And today, this morning, we will continue the subject that has been already touched upon, which is control, supervision, regulation of economic processes and social processes happening in this country and what happens in other countries as well. Today's discussion is new standard of financial control in Russia. Transparency and prevention has been recommended and has been agreed upon with all the participants. This subject, this title of this discussion, and that kind of echoes the discussions we had over the previous 2 days. Most of the participants in this session, and we have discussed that before the start of the session, we are aware that what was discussed in the first plenary session with the Prime Minister speaking, Mr. Medvedev, this very fact, what he spoke about, well, the messages that he conveyed in his presentation, the idea of this guillotine, regulatory guillotine, it can apply to the whole system of controlling and supervisory bodies of the Russian Federation, which is still in process of development. We understand, of course, that the system is not simply in the process of development. Well, the transparency is a key word, and it is in the title of our session. This requires change. That will happen in the near future. And people in financial control will have to participate in this process. There is no going away from that. The digital economy, the digital government, it's a reality of our time. Every day, every step we take, it gains momentum, becoming absolute reality. And I think time is coming when the role of any financial controlling body, well, those bodies like fake visas, a problem we had in the 1990s, that was a big problem back then, but today what can happen in this distributed register, in this cloud, could be much bigger problems. So all the participants should be prepared for those changes and to the new form of transparency. What surrounds us right now and what will happen in the coming years, on the one hand, it's like a fairy tale. It's fantastic, very impressive. There's a lot of discussion of, well, one of the deputies of the central bank compared the options for of profitability, compared that to characters from Russian fairy tales. Quoting many fairy tales and bringing that into the modern setting with profitability. Well, of course there are fairy tales, but in addition to those fantastic stories, we also have a virtual element of control. That genie moving from one owner to another owner, or some other characters are fairy tale forms of financial control, in a way. Well, I give the floor a constant participant, main speaker in our session. Well, in the first forum, we did not have a session, but all following Gaidar 4, the financial control session was present Well, the names were different, but well, that was essentially the financial control session. Valery Goreglyad. Now we give the floor to you. You're not only many years speaker and a moderator of the session, you're also our colleague, head of a chair in our institute, so the floor is yours. Thank you, Alexander. Indeed. Well, we have a lot to borrow from the history or mythology of Russia. Genie is a rather Oriental tradition, not Russian though, and maybe apply to different type of lending. For us, more typical character is Yemelya, a guy who did nothing. But we should not be sitting idle like Yemelya. Financial control is really a very important function. There are many characters, of course. Well, there are also characters and fairy tales who produce goods, wealth to people for nothing. But we are different. And life is changing. The historical context is changing, but the problems remain the same. What they were back in the old days with the fairy tales, now we have similar problems. It's not the first meeting that we have devoted to the subject, and the fact that organizers of the forum keep on including the session in the agenda of the conference shows that this topic continues to be very much relevant. Control and audit, very relevant subject, used to be like that in the past and continue to be this way for as long as there are public finance, private finance, for as long as there's a threshold between them, which often leads to illegal flows from government finance to private finance, creating all those criminal cases. And every time we had such discussions, we wanted the subjects for the discussion to be more relevant for the time. Always looking at the general, broader context. And changes in audit and control may not be that quick, but considering that the external world is changing so quickly, considering that the economy is expanding so quickly, so very many new technologies appear in the technology. That's all a challenge for audit as well. So audit has to change and change quickly. Actually, if we talk about preventive control, we need to change this profession even quicker than these changes happening around us to be able to adequately respond to what is happening around us. Well, audit is not an isolated profession, of course. It's a tool allowing it to improve the management of economic processes at macro and micro level. Very important that we have people in external control, experts in public control, people who know internal control processes very well, all gathered at this table, which is very good, which shows that it's an integrated system and every element in the system is important to meet today's challenges. We need to first clearly see the current state of these main elements of control. I will not try to cover all the elements and all the problems that we have right now, because there are very many professional people in their areas here. But in broader strokes, I will try to show the main changes we have in each of the areas. Now, sorry, still having difficulties using this device. Now, public finance and control. This is mainly public finance. The problems there are traditional characteristics of all jurisdictions associated with inefficient use of resources, not only monetary resources, continues to grow the property divide, stratification of society in terms of income, shadow economy. That's a problem which is relevant in varying degrees from jurisdiction to jurisdiction. But again, that's a big problem. It's a breeding ground for the financing of terrorism, something which is a great concern for supreme financial control bodies. Corruption potential of government procurement continues to be a big issue, and also discussed for a long time, especially at the top of financial control level and at conferences. This discussion is going on how to measure our economic successes and how objective the GDP is as an indicator of economic performance. And most experts now coming to the opinion that we need a new system of performance indicators. And there are proposals around that we should calculate the index of happiness rather than GDP. The subject came about a long time ago, but today becomes very popular idea, especially in Russia. Before, people would consider this as an exotic idea. Now it really is quite relevant. But we need to define the methodology, of course, for this indicator. Supreme control bodies, including Chamber of Accounts, they operate in accordance with the basic international agreements, Rome Declaration 77, Mexican Declaration 2007, and based on those international agreements and the best international practices as organ of parliamentary control, the Chamber of Accounts should assure the transparency of the use of budgetary funds. But what's important here, that today, this year, our supreme financial control body came up with a new strategy for the development of Chamber of Accounts for 2018-2024 with a mission, a vision, objectives and tasks of the Chamber of Accounts. I will not go into detail discussing this document because Tatiana is here. She can do it better. But from my perspective, if that is going to be implemented in a serious manner, it's going to be a real turnaround in the operation of the Supreme Financial Control Body. Because with that new definition of mission, they will have to do such things as strategic audit based on an analytical function, the development of their own in-house analytical competences and tools based on new modern approaches to modeling social and economic development, applied methods of evaluating projects and programs, predictive audit methods, big data, independent monitoring of national goals or performance according to those goals. It's not simply defining the efficiency of the use of budget finance. Now it is substantiating such financing. It's a strategic mission where the Supreme Financial Control Body will evaluate how justifiable or how realistic are the strategic goals of the government in the economy, and whether the funds can be made available to implement those programs. And this objective, well, it's simple in definition, but difficult to implement, because that requires a lot of analytical instruments and tools and methods. And considering that one of the key subjects of today's discussion is IT technology, It is, of course, only with the use of IT technologies that these mission statements can be brought into practice using big database, artificial intelligence, robot technology. All of these things would be instrumental in addressing this big challenge. So, as an introduction to this discussion, I would like to draw your attention to this fact. And there are successes, like we discussed in the lobby, while in the operation of the supreme financial control bodies and regional control bodies. Well, in terms of financial control, though, which should be the main distributor of budget funding, well, remains basically the same as it was in 2013 when we had a new version of the budgetary code. One third of independent structures within the state budget that should deal with that internally, and well, the same stays like it was 6 years ago. Many managers complain that they don't have enough human resources, so they delegate some of the functions to some other managers, and that results in conflict of interest where the controlling agency and the executive authorities, they're one and the same person. This does not contribute to transparency, of course. This places additional burden on external auditors, especially considering these new challenges, and that becomes even more difficult. So I believe a more active implementation of IT technologies, in particular in the operation of uh, the government bodies, budgetary agencies, which are confronted by the need to cut personnel, IT technologies can help. Now, external audit. We've been discussed that quite a lot. There was a big conference recently under the aegis of the Central Bank of the Russian Federation, but the level of dissatisfaction continues to be high. And to not put blame on any of the colleagues, and many auditing companies responded very adequately to our criticisms back then. Many of the auditors' opinions were not approved by central bank. Many banks lost licenses. There have been problems there, and the problems persist in this particular area of external audit. But nonetheless, the traditional problems, and they're shown on the slide actually, they continue to be there. The main tendencies that we see there in external audits is consolidation. Many smaller companies fail in this competitive environment. They join bigger ones, mergers. Well, young talents are not very eager to go into this profession or industry, considering the high level of responsibility and a big degree of uncertainty about this particular area of business. And this activity is being modified right now from simple confirmation for financial statements by auditor. All that's not a very simple job to do, but they're now doing more difficult consulting services, tax support, restructuring, financial support, IT support. So I can clearly say that information technology is the future for this area of business as well. I'm sure my colleagues can give you more about that, confirming this particular statement. Problems and challenges now for internal audit. Well, internal audit is expanding quite quickly during the past few years because internal audit, they are inside companies, of course. And being so, they have the biggest possibilities on monitoring and analyzing processes happening within the company and issuing recommendations to the management. There are many problems there still. Well, the first one is assuring a real independence of those auditors. That's not the problem of auditors, the problem of owners of their businesses, because it's the main institution of the owner, working for the owner. And owners are sometimes not aware of that. It is the auditor that gives assurances to the owner that their financial resources are spent correctly. But if we look at many companies in this country, I don't mean to say all companies, but many, even maybe most companies, they don't have this understanding, and as a result, the auditor is kind of submits to the management, and executive management controls the operation of auditors. But the processes there are very fast. The changes are quick, and in particular, the use of or adaptation of IT technologies becomes more widespread. There are more opportunities arising with that, and in every new project, new program, the auditor have a possibility to decide how much of it to use. And there is interest in that. I give you case studies later on using the example of central bank of how we managed to cut labor costs or labor resources, labor inputs through the use of such methods as remote audit, for example. But Anna, I'm sure, is going to tell us more about this. This is a big subject, and of course, I cannot cover all of these particular subjects in big detail. So, we now see at this stage that audit and control should be transformed. The need for transformation is required by the need from retrospective to continuous analysis and monitoring from retrospective assessment, while the central bank they need this, especially this sort of transformation. People are not, or our clients are not much interested in the work that we did of a period of 2 to 3 to 4 years back. Now, things are changing so quickly, so that today we want to be preventive. We want to do our analysis online, and that's possible only with the use of digital technologies. So, and life is such that training process that's going not only on the job but also classroom training from all sorts of programs. It's a daily process. It's not one-off courses conducted once per year. No, it's a daily process. We're exchanging opinion, information with the colleagues all the time. We have a special council established for the purpose. And of course, we need to also be aware, that echoes what the chairman of the government spoke about the day before yesterday. The costs for control and audit and analytical activities should be reduced. We need to be aware of our costs, and to be honest with you, there are possibilities to optimize costs. We are cutting personnel in this area right now, but intensity increases with that because new methods, new tools have to be adapted and used today. Well, this is the results of international study, which IT technologies or automation technologies are used the most active in the audit process. Clearly, electronic workflow, it is present everywhere. It's not today, it's yesterday's technology. Hard to imagine a company not using that. But what's important after this, the role and place of such things as smart data processing, automation of data analysis, tools to evaluate risks. If we look at the change from year to year, the proportion of using these tools in auditors' business is increasing, which also shows that, well, that's a trend. Factors and tools of digitalization, digital drivers and tools. This is big data, visualization of data, predictive analytics, cloud computing and services, robotization of processes. There could be different levels of robotization. And we do have some in central bank, but it's still in the first stages of development. We're clearly aware though where to go further.
Естественно, языка.
Of course, language training, machine training, and AI. On the example of the internal audited, we have slight differences. If we look at the external auditors, state auditors, from a point of view how to organize the transformation, let's take a look at such an issue like the main objective of the auditing or the annual auditing and the performance management according to the plan. Under new circumstances, since the planning is becoming more flexible, using various indicators and risk factors in online regime, so we can do it in a real-time manner, and where we need to have these indicators. So the efficiency of audit is assessed by its utility for the board of directors, and it's focused on main risks and aspects and risk assessment. We also change in the approaches to the assessment of the results. Audit is considered not as a controlling measure, but as a tool to get new information. So we replace just a formalistic report for the platform to make changes and management of the knowledge. In the sake of time, I will not go into details, but I just demonstrated what kind of methodological changes we will see as after the use of these new technologies. Remote auditing. Quite briefly, today we quite actively applying remote audit.
Нами реализуем.
We implement it through the digitalization on the basis of computers processing of data processing and continuous auditing. I can explain in detail all these things. Maybe my colleagues would supplement me. Yeah, I try to save some time for my colleagues. So we also use various elements of the machine operated on the basis of scripts and macros. We can automate quite routine procedures like formation of templates, consolidation of information on current expenditures. So all these procedures of the auditing procedures are done by machines, which allow us saving human resources to be used for more analytical work, which are high in demand today by the leadership. And as an example, to conclude my presentation, in order to stress the importance of this topic, I would like to show you some pilot projects as a demonstration of this. These are very important areas. The traditional methods and remote auditing. If you compare traditional first diagram, so the burden on facilities, on the audited facilities, then now they are equal 0 in remote audit. So the audited enterprise doesn't feel the presence of auditors, and it is very important because human resources are saved, and on the other hand, we can get accurate information. We don't have any problems from a point of view of inaccurate information on the basis of the documentation provided, because it's taken from the system, and this is adequate and accurate data which doesn't cause any doubt. So the work of auditors takes some time to be optimized, but our colleagues value very much these approaches, so they don't see the presence of auditors, and they can do other types of work. So you see 100% of the documentation checked. I just put full stop on this slide. And I would like to ask my colleagues to continue this topic. Thank you very much, Valery Pavlovich. You just already mentioned the next speakers. I would like to ask the representative of the Accounts Chamber of the Russian Federation, Tatiana Viktorovna. So, because we're talking about the auditors are the partners of the accounts chambers, but what we see now in the market of Bitcoin, especially in terms of how it is volatile, and so capitalization could be equal to the capitalization of the MasterCard. So how the accounts chamber thinks it will manage to find parity? With respect to these approaches, I believe this question should be addressed rather to Valery Pavlovich. Yes, but nevertheless, I would like to dwell on how we will respond to the growth of Bitcoin or decline of Bitcoin, but on other issues. No doubt that we need to introduce digital technologies. It's quite obvious, no one doubts about this, but probably it does make sense to discuss those issues that are related to the questions. What kind of a system we need to create for digitalization of the national projects, and in those information resources which would be created and which would be based on the tools which would increase the efficiency of the internal audits, internal state control and supervision, and external state auditing. I believe in this respect the combination of these requirements which would be made to the individuals could increase the efficiency of the supervisory bodies. But on the other hand, the same systems should be and can be applied in conducting external audits. But this combination of requirements which should be formed, it should work on the possible use of these resources to be created, and on the basis of these resources we would be able of ensuring the efficient supervisory and audit, and what is more important, as I think, in the framework of this audit we could attain those tasks faced by us, and it should be done promptly and quickly, and at the same time we understand that we are the most efficient tool which could create trust and confidence for the projects to be implemented within the framework of bigger national projects. So they would help us build confidence towards these projects, because we can assess and confirm the indicators. And colleagues, now we find ourselves in quite a unique situation. Of course, everyone would like to look at the back of the manual to see the answer, and we have this management system which is focusing on implementation of these objectives, and by so create the system to attain the global objective, global indicators. So at this forum we discussed the number of those indicators or actions or other measures we need to take in order to transform this system. Now we see a very interesting system at the federal level. If we compare this with what would be implemented at the regional level in order to implement national goals, then the number of those measures and indicators which would be necessary to attain these goals would be bigger. But what else? We need to move to the system of the preliminary pre-audit system, and we need to do it in the framework of the strategic audit. Why? Because we need to assess not only the results and probability of these results, but also to assess the very probability of attaining these objectives, how they are available, how they are efficient, and how they are capable of bringing us to the desired objectives. And we need to do it quite promptly and constantly, because these individual adjustments at all stages should exist, and from our point of view we need to change the functionality tools which are used in internal audit and on other levels, in other levels of audits, so by doing so to ensure a certain transformation. Question that we need to ask to answer: what kind of powers do we have at all levels of powers? Are they sufficient? Do we have a sufficient number of tools so that you have an efficient system which allows us to predict the possible situations and possible efficient use of tools? In terms of internal financial audits, I believe it's quite obvious that those functional opportunities that are available for the internal financial audit are not capable of answering this question. But this is a primary link This link should indicate to the loopholes or gaps which were not covered at some point in time and which affect the current situation, and where we need to apply our efforts to produce the maximum effect. So the system of internal financial audit is not prepared for this, not only by human resources, by also by judging by the tasks faced by it. We need to strengthen it, reinforce it, and I believe this is an obvious option. Another aspect I would like to voice: no matter how hard we have been trying to build a system of the audit as a system which is built on each stages or elements, complementary elements, we still have to attain these results. And in terms of consolidation of the efforts which we can get from the overall system of audits, be it internal or external, state or not non-state, unfortunately we can say that now we have everything perfect in this regard, not only from the point of view of efficiency of the levels, but also from a point of view of their interaction. If we are talking about the digitalization, then it means that those information resources or tools which we plan to use, they should be in line with the requirements of the consolidation of our efforts. So interaction and consolidation of all levels. This is a very important aspect. How can we build this system? To what extent will it be objective and operational? This is one of the questions that we need to answer and formulate those requirements for these respective resources. That would require undoubtedly changes in the system of requirements for HRs, for human resources and professional community, which we have now, is an obvious fact, and we shouldn't overlook this fact. And the sooner we make changes in this and increase the quality of those resources available to us, I mean human resources in the first place, so the bigger would be the output and results. And we need to do it. We should have done it yesterday, as we say, but it should be done quite promptly. In this regard, I would like to quote the words of the rector of this academy, Professor Mao, who said that we need to learn not only divide and multiply, but we need to learn other functions. And it is very important to understand to how correctly we have chosen the components of our success. Are they sufficient, and would they be enough to reach this success? So I do hope that we can promptly and efficiently address these issues. And of course, in response to what was said, indeed the accounts chamber is now undergoing transformations and changes because of the strategy of the development of our chamber, which provides for the reorientation of activities of this chamber, for strategic audits and for introduction of efficient tools to reach these objectives. As a confirmation of this, we quite fast have created new tasks of the requirements for the accounts chamber, and we reorganize our activities. This is a very important component of our activities. But in any case, we're trying to focus on strategic audits, on understanding how attainable are these objectives. We should also remember about the efficiency of our management system. I mean, the system of managing the resources that we put into these national projects. This is the main priority for the work of our chamber. How we build the system of the management of the national resources which are required for attaining national objectives. Thank you very much. Dear colleagues, the past history of the development of the financial control and supervision was based on constant disputes between the accounts chamber and the executive authorities. For quite a long time, this dispute was theoretical, and sometimes it led to the situation when after one check by executive authorities, the other authorities came to check this facility once again. Now all the contradictions are removed, and Rosfinanzor is invited here, and they cooperate with the state treasury, and I believe the federal treasury is also ensuring control for other financial instruments and tools, and if possible, encourage some bots. So, since I've consumed most of the time of this meeting, I would ask other representatives. Yes, I just counted the plates of the possible speakers. I try to be brief. Tatiana Viktorovna, thank you very much. You've touched upon a very sensitive issue or topic, and probably you answered for yourself. This is a bottleneck in the financial system, which is internal control. It should be a backbone or primary source of information for leadership, indicating possible risks or problems occurring inside the facility. So, analysis which we conduct in among those users of budget allocations or funds, we try and always indicate to these loopholes, the shortcomings to the users of the budget funds. As regards the topic, I mean the punishment and prevention, we raised the issue about the accounts chamber, and I believe we are doing the first steps with the accounts chamber in order to avoid duplications, to avoid double checks or ensure synchronized checks, to harmonize methodology, and so on and so forth. Other issues like common classificator or common approaches to the classification of violations. That was the task, to create a special task force which would be soon set up to address these issues and make some proposals with this regard. As far as the control or supervision is concerned, the state financial control is focused or concentrated on identification and punishment, prosecution. Is it enough for the society, citizens, and for ourselves? Of course, this is a question. Probably no, but we still have some room to work in, and the first question by the Deputy Minister of Finance indicates that we still have much to do in terms of the efficiency of budget funds, theft of budget funds, and so on and so forth. So the objective is to identify and prosecute. No, this is not the ultimate goal. We need to prevent or predict and make preliminary steps to prevent these violations. So this is the task faced by the Treasury of Russia. Are any tools available to us? Yes, we have these tools. We are the most advanced IT agency in Russia, which has its own IT resources and operates these IT resources. A unified information system, automated system of treasury, and other systems available to us. And what steps are we taking so that to move to another stage of the supervision, to get rid of just functions of identification, but rather proceed to the prevention? It takes some time. It's not the matter of tomorrow, maybe not the day after tomorrow, but still those steps that we are making show that we are quite confident that we will reach this ultimate goal. All calculations, all transactions in the system allow us shorten the time. Now we are developing of the mapping of risks, so to introduce risk-oriented approaches in our activities. Now the beneficiaries of our activities are the government of Russia, Ministry of Finance, and law enforcement authorities. The efficiency in planning of the supervision, whether it's good or bad, I don't know, but those violations which are detected or identified show that those approaches and appeals by our beneficiaries, the number of these appeals is quite high, and sometimes they are well elaborated, and practically by 99.9% all these risks which claims which they identify in their letters, they are confirmed. Now we are maintaining the rating of the facilities, which allows us to set a to apply a set of measures in order to mitigate the risks, especially when we cooperate with the accounts chamber in terms of the low or reduced budget funds. So when enterprises got additional funding while saving their own funds, how did we manage to solve this issue? We just made some adjustments into the presidential order. Now we see the requirements when the subjects implemented its own obligations, and the problem since 2017 is no longer exist. So our treasury tools allow us to move up to the next stage. We are using them, and of course we are the partners with the accounts chamber, and our main Directorate of Supervision of the Moscow City is also our partner. Now it's the right time that we should turn this page and start using a new model in order to avoid duplication of the measures of control and supervision. So all types of control, they are about the spending of the budget funds. So we need to use other methods of control. Dear colleagues, you know practically well that one of the key areas selected at this stage and the previous stage, if you look at the presidential decrees, so one of these areas is the infrastructure development, and of course through the infrastructural projects we would stimulate not only internal growth
станет
but also that would create good conditions for the development of business. So communications, very important. And railways are major infrastructure company in this country. Very interesting to hear what they have to say about these problems. They are using colossal resources, huge company. Auditing service of this company has a lot of experience in audit, worked various levels of audit and control in this country. Mikhail Beskhmelnitsyn. Thank you very much. Dear colleagues, the first thing I want to say is that, well, the main report delivered by Valery and Tatiana, also a very interesting report. It is with satisfaction that I listened to them, especially considering that for the first time in the history of Chamber of Accounts, they've developed a new strategy, new approach to their business, the supreme financial control body of the country. And telling us about how transformation is going on in the executive authorities. That report's also very interesting. That instills optimism in us that the objectives set by the president of this country, well, in particular the Russian railways, well, that brings hope that these objectives would be met. Why am I starting with this? Well, colleagues, Oleg has said that infrastructure is important. Indeed, but from the standpoint of the economy, the Russian Railways Company is very important contributor to the economy. 2.5 trillion of revenue. Out of this amount, procurement is 1,250,000,000,000 rubles. Very considerable. Small and medium businesses, we buy from them. Out of this total procurement amount, it is about 400 billion rubles we buy from small medium businesses. Today we're number one in the country out of the all big companies in dealing with the small medium businesses. Why am I saying this? Because these are key methods of control. Been correctly stated here that procurement is an area where the risks are the highest. And these risks are not only because there is possibility to manipulate this process, but that there are many other issues associated with regulation of this activity, in particular by Federal Anti-Monopoly Service, the controlling supervisory bodies. Like we sometimes criticize that we're buying from a single source supplier, buying locomotives from them, and they tell us, well, this is not the right thing to do, but there's only one manufacturer in the country of locomotives, in engines. At the same time, all these issues must be addressed And the objectives for the near future until 2024 for the development of infrastructure, what Valery mentioned in his previous statement, they are huge, huge objectives. In particular, connection to Far Eastern ports and borders with China, increasing throughput by 50%. It's 120 million tons that we can carry right now. And the objective is to carry 180 million tons. So we have to increase throughput for containers in particular by 4 times. The growth will be then per year would be about 60% every year. And the container should be able to carry the, or according to the decree of the president, from Vladivostok to Belarusian border in 7 days. Today we can do it in 13 days. So all of these challenges must be met. Without that, we will not be able to expand the economy of the country, because infrastructure is absolutely needed for that. It's the backbone of the economy. It's the blood circulation system of the country. Either it can provide oxygen to the body or not. If not, then the body would decay. To address all these challenges, we're going to use our internal resources, and we have such resources over the past 3 years. We've accumulated about 140 billion rubles through the reduction of costs, increase of efficiency in the company as a whole, and individual businesses of the company. But the development of infrastructure is, of course, a government level task. We're getting money from the federal budget already to expand from the National Wealth Fund, and we're using these resources in construction of infrastructure. In 2018, the company built 580 kilometers of new railways. This is a lot. In particular, bypassing Ukraine. You know, until recently, we crossed the Ukrainian border to be able to reach Rostov and the south of Russia. Now we have a bypass line, and it's a modern rail track. We can use this infrastructure for passenger transportation with a speed 140 kilometers and a cargo train 100 kilometers per hour. Control, though, is important here. Of course, it is our obligation inside of the company to establish such a system of internal control that would assure that all these resources are effectively used. How can this be done? 2 ways. First, our classical approach in control. We should completely address this, which means preliminary, current, and after control. With the introduction of digital technology, the preliminary and current control can fully be automated and mechanized. For this, we need more than just process financial data from a payment order, way bills, etc., primary documents, consolidated accounting documents. For this, we also are implementing technical control resources, which is sensors, measurement devices, cameras, which accumulate information, and that information will further be used for analysis of the situation in particular facility. And on the other hand, comparing this information against the accounts and statistical data. This is a lot of help. Of course, we're thankful for the fact that the Treasury of the Russian Federation and the Chamber of Accounts of the Russian Federation are now emphasizing analytics in control function, and that helped with the Treasury support. They do control the budget spending, and the same information goes to the Chamber of Accounts. When we get an inspection from the Chamber of Accounts, and according to the resolution of the State Duma, we monitor the situation and we report every quarter. So based on that, we have a single database with them. Considering that we also have information from those measurement devices that I mentioned before, what remains to be done is to simply compare this information, check against each other, and identify risk and try to mitigate risk. That gives ground for more objective control on the one hand, and on the other hand, that saves resources. There's one problem which deserves our attention. The problem of effect. The stage of making a decision on allocating funding with expected effect. Well, at this point in time, we might want to make sure there's no one unilateral responsibility. What I mean to say, infrastructure, say infrastructure. We can create infrastructure, but say nobody wants to use this infrastructure, colleague. We, we want to be sure that the infrastructure that we build will be used and produce the desired effect for the company and for the government, for the state. Let me use this example again. 100 plus million tons. Coal, people, raw materials. We require from them so-called letters of comfort. What does that mean? Well, let's just submit a letter. Now, what we want to have that the controlling bodies, government controlling bodies, they, once they make a decision like this, at the preliminary stage, they should get stronger assurances from such companies that they will use the railway before even the government invests money in building that. Like a take or pay contract. Like we would want to have a similar situation with the construction of infrastructure. If we organize this work in this particular manner, combining the efforts of the controlling bodies and business all together, then of course we'll get very good effect and we'll be able to address the challenges facing us. Thank you. Thank you, Mikhail. To continue the subject of effective investment in infrastructure, well, we have very interesting internal discussion. Well, Tatiana said, well, Chamber of Accounts, she said, if I understand you correctly, Chamber of Accounts is now emphasizing preliminary control. Mikhail spoke about this preliminary control. So, well, in terms of Roman declaration, there are two positions devoted to preliminary control, and out of almost 200 countries signatories to the declaration, as far as I remember, 60 of those did not use preliminary control, only current control and further control, not preliminary one. So interesting to know. The head of Moscow controlling authorities. Well, in Moscow, a big city, a lot of infrastructure, a capital city of the country, a lot of construction. Can it happen without the efficient control, including financial control, etc., etc.? Your viewpoint, what methods, what mechanisms would be used in the future by Moscow and, well, most of us live in Moscow, but other regions, of course, as well. How are you going to control that in the future? Thank you, Alexander. Unfortunately, this function that performed by my body, it's the organ of government financial control. We're not controlling citizens of Moscow. We're controlling what is done from the state budget. But in recent years, we received a lot of additional authority. This government or financial control and audit, This tendency, I think, will continue. We will have more and more authority and functions in the future, and because, well, the more efficient this controlling function, the more um, the better for the economy. Well, new standard of financial control and state audit, the title of this session is absolutely relevant subject. And the Ministry of Finance is preparing this standard actually, as provided by the budget code. And we will make our proposals to the team that is doing that is doing this work. Let me highlight on a few points. First, in government financial control, and Valery spoke about that. Well, you spoke about the concept, how to control, and essentially, we are going to follow it without maybe inventing new things. But in the area of government control, the technologies of control are obsolete right now. What we are controlling right now, like we did 10 years ago, even 50 years ago, but considering the increased responsibilities and scope that we have right now, like yesterday, there was an open discussion where discussed a matter of government national projects and government programs, and there was a number that we have about 3.5 thousand metrics to check on the progress of those national programs and to ensure effective control over the implementation of those projects. While it's a very big challenge, how can we do that using only traditional tools? Sending letters or electronic tables asking for information, and we check it and recheck it. This will not facilitate those projects. That would put brakes on the progress because it's a lot of paperwork. So government financial control, we being an organ of that control, we don't want to put brakes on the development of the economy. No, we want to help that process so that we move abreast of the times, and the control is, so to speak, invisible for the controlled subject. The next part is internal financial control and audit, which should be organized within executive authorities organizations. As Valery has said, nothing basically changed after this standard was implemented. Yes, I would agree with that. Shortage of personnel, yes, agree with that, and not much desire or motivation from the executive authorities to implement these systems, because, well, it's so many types of controls there. Even professionals cannot always find their bearings there, because there's internal accounting control, internal financial control, internal financial audit, control of procurement, etc., etc. So when people start implementing the whole system and the executive authorities, many top officials would not try to go deeply into the process, because they would tell that, well, we know what's happening within my organization, rather than all spend time and effort implementing this very complex system. But to be able to establish a good technological model, we need to first figure out what is what and where is where in terms of those elements of control. Some of them can be fully automated. That would facilitate our task. So we see automation, digitalization of control as our future. This does not mean, though, that all controllers will be equipped with iPads and we implement electronic workflow or install computers and have project management for this. No, not only that. There's one subject related to that. Well, a smart control, digital control, cannot be without digitalization of the whole system of public government, without the creation of modern digital systems which would carry reliable data, which would assure high level of protection of this data by building the control tools within that bigger system. We can improve the efficiency of the whole system. Now, like it works in Moscow today, in Moscow, we have more than 30 big systems, IT systems, that manage various aspects of the city processes. And we have more than 5,000 points of control in those systems, built into those systems. How do we do it? A controlling body participated in the development of the architecture of those information systems. And we put in two things. First, the very business process, what built into that system according to the rules established by law. You cannot bypass them any longer because the IT system would not allow doing that. Like unified procurement system. Without certain superimposed limits, you cannot even start planning a procurement process. We can give another example. Alerts and notices. It's when information about a violation would automatically go to the system of the controlling body, to the desktop in that system, and we can immediately take decision on which what to do about the person who violates this. In 2018, there was about 6,000 such alerts. That's in procurement only. Does not mean there are more violations. No, it means in the past we could process only 10% or so of all the information required from controlled subjects, because we had to visit them and look up things in contracts in paper format. But today, alerts come to the system automatically. A control official simply makes a decision of what to do about this particular violation, what punishment to exercise. Some other examples to improve the efficiency of controls through building into the information technology system, well, is cloud accounting. What does it help? In what does it help? Well, it has the following effects. Well, cloud accounting as a digital tool can be built into other processes, managerial process of the city, like combining it with the procurement system made it possible to automatically register goods and services under government contracts. And some of the violations in the accounts have been removed in the process. And this is a very big item in terms of violations according to the statistics of the Chamber of Accounts. Also using this cloud accounting, while the auditors or inspectors do not have to visit physically the subjects, look up all the documents, they can do it remotely, check the information from the distance and derive their own conclusions as to whether there are any violations in that controlled subjects or not. I believe that these effects could be many. To conclude, let me tell you this. Well, that's repeating some of Valery has said, but the key points. that could be put into this new standard and we feel should be in that standard. And that would be, well, our message to the people who develop it. Well, first, the control should be invisible. We should not exert pressure on the controlled subject. We should do it remotely, and that would make it quicker and more efficient. Second, saving time, financial and human resources. That, well, removing some of the functions, automating them, removing from the shoulders of human controllers so that they devote that time to more important tasks. And number three, something we did not do in the past, compare the costs to exercise control with the effects, the returns from the control. Through optimizing costs, we should improve financial efficiency of control. Thank you, Evgeny. Well, the government of Moscow, well, you head of the controlling department of Moscow. Well, smart control, you said in your presentation, kind of new term. Well, the day before yesterday, lawyers spoke about live constitution. Well, if we take these two terms, I think the most advanced way of controlling is what we have in Sberbank. Oleg, 2 to 3 minutes. Your experience, we have other speakers as well. If you have, well, actually, ladies and gentlemen, the presentations from the speaker, we have all of them. If you want the written PowerPoint presentations, we'll share that with you. Well, can we display this presentation, please, to illustrate what Valery has said about implementing digital audit in Sberbank. We are also moving in that direction. I just show in this presentation some case studies how AI works, well, or deep neuron networks, how they put at the service of internal audit and how that improves the efficiency. I fully agree with Valery. 100% sampling, that's a standard. We reduced time to market by about 100 times. This how quickly we do the inspections. We don't go visit them on the preliminary stage only if there's violations. We go telling them about the violations. Another important area, we can go into areas where we never were before. I mean the areas of inspection. This is made possible by data. Sberbank had a long process of centralizing data. This is timeline, and it's going on still. Once the company has a lot of data, both structured and unstructured, well, that improves the efficiency of the auditing profession very much. One case study, we have about 2,000 clients using our brokerage service. They prefer telephone conversations with our people. If you listen to them, try to identify violations, that would take 7 years. A neural network can do that in 17 days without the involvement of auditors. So auditors do other business at this time, improving productivity 100 times. In every office we have 10 to 15 cameras, everything's recorded. About 50 million hours of video collected every year. Deep neural networks allow matching the video data and the data from our operating systems for illegal transactions. And you again see the speed. And well, and it's a very big scope. We have about 300,000 employees within our group of companies. All sorts of access rights to better understand what's right, what's wrong, or whether the access has been provided correctly or not. Auditors will take a lot of time to do that. Neural networks, once set, having the right settings, they can do it in 3 days. Of course, they operate 24 hours a day on a very big computing power, releasing auditors to do more important analytical tasks. Videos, video recognitions, image recognition, checking whether signage is correct or and other things are correct. Uh, Again, this process fully automated, and the speed is again much better than human with human involvement. And well, yesterday, Mr. Gref, when he returned from the conference, he was actually he's still not satisfied with where we are in terms of artificial intelligence. He called that we're still in a sandbox. He said we want more ambitious plans in terms of AI, and that concerns everybody, including the auditing part of the business. We will continue there.
Это не как
Thank you, Oleg Vladimirovich. This is not just the abstract example. This is why we ask the representative of Sberbank to contribute to this discussion. So processes in terms of applying these tools are practically the same. So Sberbank, as the biggest financial entity, possesses a lot of potential to diversify the tools. But if you have the possibilities and will, then you can easily install and apply these tools. Financial sector is a little bit advanced in terms of other sectors situation, and we assisted greatly by our consultants, but we have also controlled, and in 10 minutes time we will be asked out of this room, and we still have some presenters to tell something. Please, 2 minutes probably. Please confirm the rightness of our conversation. Yes. Good morning. I tried to be brief. Probably I will show some slides still, just to try to confirm the opinion of my friends that now we are trying to form standards of new audit system. Maybe we need to look at the experience of private companies, not only Russian but the foreign ones. I will skip several slides, and just to say that we need to realize that technologies stealthily approached us, and it's not just a game. This is the objective reality of our day-to-day life, and it requires some drastic changes. This is the list of those technological novelties which are already are the driving forces in the financial sectors, and they would penetrate even deeper in the financial sector quite fast, which the things that were yesterday novelties, now they are forgotten today. I will skip this slide. You will can get this presentation. This deals with the changes of the sites because of the number of financial solutions, and which runs 100 already. Before, what we have in internal audit, we are on the threshold of the digital transformation, which it's quite important. We need to change several aspects. We face a task stemming from the technological components, and we have big data. We need to manage them. A lot of transactions are carried out in real-time terms, and we have complex regulations which interlinked with many other sectors. The sector and industry is changing, and we move away from bank to the platform, as Sberbank is a perfect example of the platform. We have new requirements for new services by the customers. Much has been said about talented guys, and this is also in high demand. So where should we move? I mean the audit. It was said already, three main trends. We change our role. We are not inspector, we are advisory or counselor, business counselor. From periodicity of checks to the constant audits and talents. We are changing our mandate, changing the operational model and digital instruments and talents. I will skip this slide. The mandate for the future functions of audit. I will dwell on digital tools. Robots were mentioned here. IA, artificial intelligence, and process mining. These are technologies that have been already introduced and applied not only in the foreign companies but in the Russian companies as well. As Oleg has said, that increased the speed by 100 times the speed of operations and transactions. There is a huge number of examples how the automation increases the efficiency. 100% of documents checked, and for audits, this means only one thing, that we spend more resources for some important things rather than routine things. Process mining is a new technology to monitor the real processes in real-time terms. If we see some regulations, we know 10% if we ask persons who are involved in this process. This is 40% about the process. If we introduce process mining, then we get 100% of information. So we cover practically all. I'll skip the examples. And what about Russia? Russia, in fact, is among the leaders. We provided the statistics as of 2015. Even 3 years ago, we considerably advanced and outpaced the European global respondents in terms of penetration of the digital technologies. These are the main tasks or the agenda. Bank of Russia confirmed this in its program with respect to the digital initiatives. So agenda is digital. And finally, how internal audits could be useful. First thing is that, in fact, using the knowledge and in internal audit could improve the quality of the sector as it is. Second aspect, taking part in the digital transformation, internal audits will help find the right way to move forward. And as practice shows, recently we have been persuaded that the profession of external and internal auditor is quite relevant, but it now is transforming, getting new nuances in order to implement new tasks by shareholders and customers. We've talked a lot of technologies, methodologies. Maybe we need to talk about other processes, about threats, risks. Maybe briefly, Elena Leonidovna, Dean of the Department of the Criminal Law, very interesting discussion, but I would like, knowing that I don't have much time, to say that today new technologies and financial control are getting new quality, especially from a law enforcement practice. Digital economy is regarded through the prism of cryptocurrencies, tokens, and so on and so forth, and it can be justified because cryptocurrency is much closer to the digital economy. I would like to identify the main problems and issues which need to be solved in the framework of financial control and audit. First is new digital assets. In October 2018, FATF considered this issue and decided that cryptocurrencies should exist, it should be regarded as an expression of value and should be in circulation. It was presented to reconsider the position of providers of cryptocurrencies, and it was recommended to develop a known model of system of control and monitoring as regards of the circulation of cryptocurrencies. So we introduced it in the legislation, and FATF decided to provide in the summer 2020 its opinion about these processes. Russia hasn't advanced in this. Other countries made some steps, but we failed to agree what should be controlled and how it should be controlled. Recently, we prepared a draft on law on financial digital assets by Bank of Russia and Skolkovo. Cryptocurrencies were considered through the prism of financial information platforms. These information platforms by the legislation are not controlled, and we are in a strange situation. We strike down the financial organization and dealt with the subject who are beyond the control. Now we need to consider this system on the basis of the FATF recommendations and provide our vision. First, the problem of control on some avatars getting access from the bank clients to information, to internet banking, and to perform transactions. If there is something for us to do something, but we cannot do anything with avatars. This is a global problem, and in Russia in general. If we introduce this legislation, we will have to submit that there is no legal prosecution for this. Second is AML, anti-money laundering, and identification of users. And here we have a question. Should we use traditional or a new model in this regard, and how it could